Hello, and welcome to Revamped, a rewatch podcast that revisits my top favorite shows and movies. I'm your host, Brandon Alexander, joined by my co-host,
Courtney Autumn.
Venture with us as we set our sights on the infamous Hellmouth to cover 90s cult classic, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Follow along from the beginning, spoiler-free, as Courtney views the show for the first time and I revisit the series for new takes and a fresh perspective on its narrative.
Each season, every episode, in order, we will follow Buffy Summers and her friends to examine their character development, the show's underlying themes, along with its major story arcs, all while engaging in conversations, sharing our own authentic thoughts and feelings to what's unfolding before us.
So sharpen your stakes, load your crossbows, and join us as we explore the supernatural world of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Let's get into the episode.
We're back for another episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Season 1, Episode 5, Never Kill a Boy on the First Date.
Yes.
Original air date was on March 31st, 1997. This episode was written by Rob Desautels and Dean Batali and directed by David Semel. When Buffy catches the eye of charming fellow high school student Owen, she decides to give dating a try. However, she soon discovers that balancing a normal life and her duties as a Slayer are more challenging than expected when Giles realizes an ancient prophecy will occur, bringing the rise of a powerful entity to aid the Master. As the prophecy looms on the night of Buffy's first date, she must come to terms with the sacrifices she must make in order to fulfill her destiny. Here we are for episode 5. This was a lot of fun. What did you think of it?
I totally agree. I had a lot of fun with this one, especially because I was ready for the show to dive into the element more so of Buffy needing to really have this double life element and how that was going to all work out. So I was like stoked when I knew that this premise was getting set up for the first few minutes of the episode. I was like, yes, finally.
This one's like a real Buffy episode to me, just as later season 1 episodes like Angel, Nightmares, Prophecy Girl. Having seen the show in its full glory, this episode really hits and reminds me of future episodes, or rather, looking back, it's one that gets referenced across the whole board of the series, and it's definitely one that stands out. It just gives me the back to the beginning vibes. By the time you reach the show's end, or even along the course, they make mention of this episode, or just parts of it, elements from it. It ties back in random ways throughout the series, which is so funny to think about because it's episode 5. It's not even a huge, crazy episode, but it pushes the main storyline. I'll give more on that when we reach other episodes and definitely when we reach the end of Buffy's journey. But from the fight sequences, Buffy's adaptation as the Slayer, which I'll speak on numerous times through the episode and in closing, she just pulls herself in here. Willow and Xander are continuing to show up for the ride. Giles is standing in his role and deepening his relationship with Buffy. And of course, all the humor that's placed across the end of the episode too. There's so many funny little nods and the situations that they get into. They have humorous ways of dealing with it, honestly, which is fun for cynical people to be watching a show about this because they make in light of everything. They about to all die and they all be like, oh, we gonna die. And they'd be like, all right. Not to mention also the teen life vibes of dating and boys being an element in the episode. And it's also too bad that we never see poor Owen again after this. He's never mentioned on. I'm going to spoil it for you just so that way you're not season 3. Where's Owen? They about to graduate high school and Owen ain't been in a single episode. Owen went out for danger and got himself killed apparently because he ain't never come back. But either way, the stakes are being raised for this episode and our big bad, the Master. And it just really leaves you with an oh shit moment and wondering what will Buffy be facing and just how prophecies in this show are for sure a big deal. I want to make mention too, when I was editing last week's episode for Teacher's Pet, and I told you after you said your opening statement of the episode, I was like, oh, you triggered something in me and I can't remember what it was. You made a comment, oh, I feel like this is one of those episodes that along the journey I might forget, but then I'll be like, oh yeah, that episode with Miss French. You remember that? The thing that I wanted to say back to you, I was like, bitch, you about to do a whole podcast. Buffy's about to be beating your head. There ain't no way you about to forget no episode of Buffy ever.
Anger. You are right. Well, I was thinking too, because number one, Miss French is hot, so I don't know that I would forget her character in general. But I've noticed this element because I've been looking back at my notes just from the past few episodes, and I'm like, there's really a diehard element sometimes that comes up with decapitation. somebody always got to lose a head, and so I don't know now that I will forget that episode because it's just going to fall under the category of like
Yeah, I feel you.
headlessness.
I mean, it is a show about
Hereditary.
vampires, and one of the ways to kill them is beheading. Hold up. Oh my God, we got to bring up Hereditary every single episode, apparently. It's the obligatory hereds. Anyways, the last episode, unfortunately, we got the near miss of Xander almost getting his head, chopped off. But
Yeah.
Nixon's in the episodes.
Dang, I almost
No, but
forgot
I wanted to
about that.
mention that because I get what you meant in that episode. Those kind of episodes fall to the wayside when you really think about the other one. And once we get through some deep, nitty gritty shit and like heavy stuff happens, you're going to be like having others that are just 10 times more memorable across the board for sure.
Yeah, well, and you know already where the whole series goes, and I don't. And so I meant it also in a way where like we're just in season 1. So I think in essence there will be episodes that will probably be forgotten as we travel further into each other season after this one, because it'll just get overshadowed with, I can't even imagine what the fuck's gonna happen like by the last season of Buffy, so that out of all the episodes, I feel like it could get easily overshadowed, but not this one.
All right, great. That's a great usher into getting into the episode in general.
In every generation, there is a chosen one. She alone will stand against the vampires, the demons, and the forces of darkness. She is the Slayer.
Elevated music kicks in as one ugly vampire pops up on the screen with a strong... He growls. Like, that thing scared me. It made me jump. He all reared back, and I'm like, all right, time to get kicked in the face. And then we see a foot be dealt to his face. And we pan out to see Buffy is battling a vampire late into the night. He isn't getting a single lick in, and Buffy blocks every advance and then deals more blows to him, sending him slamming to the ground. Buffy, whipping out a stake from behind her, sways back and forth slightly, waiting for him to get up again, which he does, and runs at her, and she tells him, "We haven't been properly introduced." She thrusts the stake into his chest.
I'm Buffy, and you're history.
Him falling back, exploding into a pile of dust. Dusting, one of the coolest parts on the show, and we get the 2K per slay this episode because they said it's episode 5. We got the budget. We didn't get an episode 3 slay on a vampire. We didn't get an episode 4 slay on a vampire. We stayed with all our off-screen shit, so we're going to save that for episode 5. This also, too, they only could afford it for this one time, which is why we see, Mr. Judgment Man at the end get his off-screen flamey death. Because, they had to use the 2K per slay at the beginning of this year.
I was waiting for it whenever he came up. I was like, ooh, are they going to do it or not?
Dust.
Now I'm always waiting. I'm like, do they got the 2K or do
Later
they
on,
not?
they're just going to be dishing out money. Like, they're going to be like, you get a dust, Oprah.
For dustings episode.
Buffy, admiring her work, hears Giles call out, "Poor technique," as we see him pop up from behind a gravestone. He walks around to her, having clearly been hiding behind there while she slayed. He continues to critique, adding, "Prioritizing subpar, execution was adequate, and a bit too bloody for his taste." Buffy taking this moment to add sarcastically, telling him,
Giles, don't mention it. It was my pleasure to make the world safe for humanity again.
him replying,
I'm not saying that your methods are without merit. You're expending too much time and energy. It should simply be plunge and move on.
"Plunge, Buffy, and move the fuck on." He takes eye to a twinkle on the ground, exclaiming, "Hello." He kneels down with a pen he'd been journaling with, scooping up a ring that lay in a shadow of dust. Buffy, taking eye to the jewelry, which he returns to stand by her, once again with a sarcasm tells Giles,
Oh, that's great. I kill him, you fence their stuff.
Him staring at her blankly unamused, she rolls her eyes, and she looks over at the ring, engaging. What is it? He's not sure, but it bothers him. Him thinking this vamp was just on a random kill, but it may be something else. Something big, Buffy wonders? He finishes yes, and he must consult his books, just as we cut to a huge old book being slammed on a dusty altar pew. The master stands before it and opens it, reading to vampires surrounding him, "And there will be a time of crisis, of worlds hanging in the balance, and in this time shall come the Anointed. The master's great warrior, and the Slayer will not know him, will not stop him, and he will lead her into hell." He said, "As it was written, so shall it be."
5 will die, and from their ashes the Anointed shall rise. The brethren of Aurelius shall greet him and usher him to his immortal destiny.
As it is written, so shall it be. The master, continuing as he walks down to face one of the vampires, continues,
And one of the brethren shall go out hunting the night before and get himself killed, because he couldn't wait to finish his job before he ate. Oh, wait.
He grabs the vampire by his throat and hoists him off the ground, us seeing his feet dangle. He looks at him at the other vampires and says,
That's not written anywhere.
Choking him harder, we hear crushing sounds. His voice takes on a deep rasp and anger to threaten.
The anointed will be my greatest weapon against the Slayer. If you fail to bring him to me, if you allow that girl to stop you.
And then he just tosses the vampire across the room like Thomas's dad wanted to do in the airport that day. He lands onto the altar pews, crushing them forcefully. The master slams the book shut and closing herewith,
Here endeth the lesson.
and walking off. For this opening sequence, Buffy is doing the damn thing, I gotta say, because her fighting seems a little bit different than what we've seen. We usually see short little shots, but this time we get that one-on-one combat with her, and she's more confident, if anything. But we get two of Buffy's popular quotes, one of them being, the I'm Buffy in your history part. Always gotta say a pun before she takes on vampire. This vampire's like, why are you talking to me so much? I don't understand. He's like, can I just eat you already? But she's just like a smart ass, and she's just getting the job done. She has no fear. She's like, I got this. And we're seeing her step into that more. I liked Buffy's smart ass with Giles too. It's playful enough to where he's getting used to her, and she's assuring him at the same time though that she's paying attention, because he starts to get upset with her and be like, bitch, can you get serious? And she's like, okay, I'm here. What are we doing? Whatever. But it's showing that she's connected to the mission and how their Slayer and Watcher dynamic is unfolding and growing. And I want to make mention of our transition magic, because just as Giles was saying, he must consult his books, the master slams that book shut in the next shot. And we see the parallels again between the imaging of the episodes. They're just so clever with how they do that. And that's some of the things that I take huge appreciation for when watching the episode, just because most things don't do that.
No, totally.
But I like how
appreciate
the
good
scenes
editing.
literally merge. And here is also the first time that we hear the prophecy too of the master and the Slayer, which is obviously written in context in a book somewhere, because he's reading it from this old dusty book that's trapped down there with him. We'll talk more about this as time goes on, but the master's strength also being shown here is to let us know that he's not as weak as in the first few episodes. He can clearly deal more damage, and him doing this in this fury, it makes us worry over the threat that he's actually going to be a huge threat to Buffy, you know? Anyways, the Buffy theme plays. At the library the next morning, Buffy and Giles go through books discussing the ring, Buffy pointing out that it has a sun and 3 stars engraved, and recalling seeing it in one of the texts showing Giles the passage, and he reads it. It makes mention of the Order of Aurelius. Giles agreeing she was correct, her saying,
Ooh, 2 points for the Slayer, while the Watcher has yet to score.
Buffy's fashion moment here. She has that new bubbly ring. This one's orange. I just have to throw out because I love these little rings. You know, I went crazy in the first one, but we haven't seen them reemerge again since. But she's got an orange one on this time, and her sitting on this table. I was over here panting. Like, Buffy is hot, and I just have to say that I think everyone would agree Sarah Michelle Gellar is gorgeous. But the dresses that she iconically wears, the short cut with the knee-high boots, they're like a staple for her at this point, and basically she'd be wearing them every episode. But this always makes me find her so attractive. Also great to note here that Buffy has obviously been doing some research and helping Giles, as she points out that she had seen in a passage with the sun and 3 stars. Giles should be proud versus end of the episode proud, because he was scolding her in the cemetery, and he was like, you're doing this, you're like taking too much time, blah, 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 blah. But she paying attention with the bookwork and the knowledge. You didn't even know this, and she happened to see it. But of course, that's just like, she had to.
She obviously arrives and showcases that she does her homework.
Every
so,
episode too.
Let her do her.
Buffy, do you? We hear one of the doors swing open and a blonde man approaching. Ooh, Owen. Buffy hops off the table where she's sitting, saying, hey, with a little half smile. Hey, Owen. We get Owen. I thought it was cute.
Me too. Although I was
Giles looks up from his book and asks, what does he want? A book, Owen says. Giles giving an, oh, Buffy commenting to Giles, you see, this is a school and we have students and they check out books and then they learn things. I was beginning to suspect that was a myth, he retaliates, looking back to Owen, who goes on to say, he's lost his Emily Dickinson, informing them that he likes to have a copy to carry around, like a security blanket. Nonsense. Buffy, nervous, goes on that she has one too, only it's an actual blanket, and doesn't carry it around. Hitting on herself instantly, changes the subject to say, so Emily Dickens, huh? She's great. Owen correcting her, saying,
Dickinson.
Buffy saying back,
She's good also.
I laugh out loud here every time Buffy has this awkward try-hard energy and just be crushing on someone. And we've all done that where we're trying to relate to them or impress them, especially as a young adult. And you just stammer up. You're like, I like the same things you do. I've never heard of this person before in my life. She's good often. Giles points him in the direction of the books, and Buffy and him walk over to collect one together. They speak on how he didn't expect finding her in the library, guessing that she didn't seem to be a bookworm type. She just stares at him, and he assumes he's offended her, but she smiles in a surprise that he's even thought about what she'd be like. He assures her that she shouldn't be smiling back at her. He walks off to go check the book out, her following him saying how she actually loves books, and he asks what the one her and Giles have open on the table reading is. She quickly guards the book while Giles collects it. Ooh, not this one, she says. Giles agreeing, yeah, this one she doesn't love. Giles checks the books out for him, Giles commenting how she's a good poet for an American. Owen tells her he'll see her in math and leaves. Giles tries to talk about the Order of Aurelius in the text again, but Buffy is distracted by Owen walking away, saying, that was Owen, gushing. Yes, I remember, he comments. Do you have any more copies of Emily Dickinson? I need one, she asks. Him sarcastic, saying, Buffy, while the mere fact of you wanting to check out a book would be grounds for a national holiday, I think we should focus on the problem at hand. She tries to agree as he looks over the books, telling him he's right. Let's talk vampires. She looks down at herself once more and then back up at Giles, motions to her hips with her hand, saying,
Oh, does this outfit make me look fat?
Giles' face looks fed the fuck up. I feel bad for Giles right here because his face really says it all. He is so over this girl and realizing what he has to deal with. He was like, I can't get her for a moment. Like she always got something going on. Maybe I'm distracted, Buffy. We see Willow and Buffy grabbing lunch in the cafeteria talking about her and Owen's interaction. Willow commenting how that's a big deal. He's broody, solitary, and mysterious, and doesn't give time to hardly anyone. Buffy telling her that they talked about Emily Dickinson as they walk over to meet Xander at a nearby table, and Willow comments how he is seemingly sensitive, yet manly. But Buffy's never read the author. Buffy shows her a book of Emily's, and Willow calls out, oh, you vixen, smirking but happy. Buffy makes moves to relate to Owen. Xander chooses to comment on how the green stuff they're serving for lunch looks questionable. Buffy wanting to avoid the subject with a disgust face, he adds, it looks like kale, or possibly string cheese.
It looks more like slime to me.
He takes this moment to ask her how the slaying go last night, to which she scolds him and corrects himself to say, how'd the laying go? Wait, no, I don't mean that either. She tells him it went fine, thank you, telling the two that there's some hoity-toity new vampire saint in town. Before they can actually get into it, Xander points out how Mr. Excitement, the ladies had been speaking about, is sitting over there alone reading at a nearby table. Buffy looks up to see Owen. Perhaps someone should go and sit with him. She grabs her item, gets up, and moves over there. Just as she's about to sit down, we see Cordelia moving in quick, saying, look, an empty seat. Hit bumping Buffy out of the way, causing her lunch to spill over and sitting down in one fell swoop. Owen saying, oh, let me get that. He bends down to help Buffy clean the mess. Buffy using this moment to make Cordelia look bad, stating aloud,
Boy, Cordelia's hips are wider than I thought.
Cordelia giving her a mean glare. Then Cordelia tells Owen about how a bunch of them are going to the Bronze tonight and he should come. He asks Cordelia who all is going, and she states, well, I'm going to be there. He asks who else. Her surprise, he's dim, saying, you mean besides me? He looks to Buffy, what about you? Cordelia snaps, no. She doesn't like fun. He stands up to look at Buffy and says, why don't we meet there at 8? She stands in awe, setting her lunch tray down over Cordelia's food, not looking away from Owen, saying she'll be there. Buffy versus Cordelia the whole episode. Buffy commenting so quick on Cordelia's hips too, like to make her unappealing as shit. Buffy wins this round, but aka all rounds. Owen is clearly into blondes though, because he like shoves off Cordelia pretty much the whole episode, except when Buffy is not around. He just completely avoids her, and smart deflecting.
Well, that she's also extra desperate.
Oh, totally. We'll get into some
Not
Cordelia
you.
stuff too, because I have so much that I want to say about parallels between Buffy and Cordelia, like how they're trying to like pin them against each other in that way. There's like totally a reason, but it'll make sense.
Yeah.
And I want to bring everything full circle when we get to episode 11, because then we'll have a Cordelia-centric episodes.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Our next shot is her and Willow walking down the halls toward the library, commenting on how it's not a big deal, Buffy objectifies. Willow saying it's a very big deal, excited for her, giving off great friend energy. They merge with Giles, who is also coming into frame, overhearing partly. Willow tells him to tell her it's a big deal. Giles saying, I'm afraid it's very big. They grow confused and follow him into the library, asking, wait, what is he talking about? He directs the same question back at them, and they together in unison say,
Boys.
Yes, well, I'm talking about trouble, he clarifies, going on how a violent and disturbing prophecy is about to be fulfilled. Buffy brings up the order, and he tells her that she was spot on about the connection, how he has reviewed the passages entirely, and says that in Aurelius's writings himself, he prophesies that the brethren of his order would come to the Master and bring him the anointed. Willow asks, who's that? Giles confirming he's not sure, perhaps seeing it's a warrior, stating that it mentions that he will rise from the ashes of 5 on the evening of the 1000th day after the advent of Septim. Buffy nods at him, saying, well, we'll be ready whenever that is. Him informing her that that date is tonight. Tonight, okay, she quickly starts snapping, wait, no, not okay. It can't be tonight. He assures her his calculations are correct, and she tells him that they must be bad calculations. Willow chiming in as if to convince him also, Buffy has a really important date tonight. Buffy looking at him, whining, Owen. Giles pops his book closed and smarts off to them, saying,
All right, well, I'll just jump in my time machine, go back to the 12th century, and ask the vampires to postpone their ancient prophecy for a few days while you take in dinner and a show.
Buffy clocking him, saying,
Okay, at this point, you're abusing sarcasm.
Giles sets his arms down on the desk and urges her that this is no ordinary vampire. They have to stop him before he reaches the Master. She whines some more, saying, but cute guy. She's a post-pubescent teen with fantasies. He tells her that those will just have to be put on hold, that the dark forces are aligning against them and they have a chance to beat them back. Tonight, they go into battle. We flash immediately to late night at the cemetery, where him and Buffy sit appearing to be bored as crickets trill in the background. After moments of awkward silence, Giles speaks up that perhaps he's miscalculated. Annoyed, Buffy states, I'm thinking yes, and sips down some of her to-go cup drink. Giles gets up, noting that they potentially wasted enough time this evening, Buffy commenting on how there are not even any fresh graves about. Who's going to rise if not so? Giles saying, apparently no one tonight. Buffy hops up excited that she can bail so she can go to the Bronze and find Owen. Giles telling her she can go follow her hormones if she wishes, but he assumes he needs not warn her about becoming involved with someone who's unaware of her unique condition. Unique New York. I didn't until I messed up just now. Yes, exactly. She assures him that she's read the back of the box. He heeds more warning that if someone finds out that she's the Slayer, it could put her and all of those in grave danger around her. She sarcastically states in that case she won't wear her button that says, I'm a Slayer, ask me how. Tells him goodnight and leaves. Giles looks over at the passage once more, commenting from it again, 5 shall die, and from their ashes the anointed shall rise. I was sure it was tonight. I gotta point out for Buffy fashion, I love her little tiger print hoodie jacket that she's got on. It's cute. I love the intensity build from one scene to the next one. Raises up the music and it's like, duh, and then all of a sudden they're just sitting there and Buffy's like, I'm ready to go. Like, this is not it. We cut to a road somewhere in town where a small shuttle bus is transporting a small group of people. Eerie music plays in the background as we get shots of each person on the bus, the man driving, a middle-aged woman, a young woman and her son, and a man. As the boy plays with a small airplane toy, he tells the guy that we learn is hella creepy immediately on the bus that he went on an airplane. The creepy man begins to spout off at the mouth. A pale horse emerged with death as his ride. You will be judged. You will be judged. He finishes looking out the window. Meanwhile, over at the Bronze, we see Buffy enter looking around as slow music plays. Rotten Apples by 3 Day Willie, to say. She looks out onto the dance floor and people part out of the way to reveal Owen and Cordelia sharing an intimate-looking dance together. Her hugging up on him and tracing her arms all over and around him, Buffy looks bummed and heads back towards the exit. Back on the bus, the creepy man continues his sermon, walking up and down the shuttle's aisles, speaking more on judgment and the fire that's coming down. I don't see how everyone on this bus hasn't told him to shut the fuck up yet, but the bus driver does demand that he needs to sit down because, vehicle moving. He doesn't do as such, and the bus driver looks at him in the rearview mirror as Creepy Doo says, Are you willing to stand with the righteous? Shut up. Just as he looks back to the road, the driver sees a man who we can see as a vampire step out into the road in front of the bus. He lays down on the horn, but crashes into the man, which he starts to brake, causing the bus to wreck into a nearby pole. Asking if everyone's okay, the driver gets out to check on the person that's been hit. As he comes up to the body, asking if he's all right, it's giving I Know What You Did Last Summer. The vampire grabs the man and bites into him. As we see more vampires start to break into the windows of the bus, grabbing people, having a feasting party as the people scream out amidst the chaos. The fact that the whole episode we get Andrew the creepy judgment guy as the red herring, when we in fact see the anointed as we overlook it before he steals the show with his annoying Bible passages, is like a total red herring. But this bus attack also is like the most brutal thing we've seen so far on the show. It's just like, tormenting these people, like howling out and screaming. I'm like, all right, time to die. But the next day at school, Buffy slams her locker shut, revealing Xander and her there talking in the hallways. Xander asking, so you went home? Buffy declaring, what was she supposed to do? Tell Owen sorry that she was sitting in the cemetery with the librarian waiting for a vampire to rise so she could prevent an evil prophecy from coming to pass? Xander offering, or flat tire? Buffy walks off with him saying she can't take this. She's bothered and she feels like a hideous, dateless monster. Everyone's staring at her. Only no one is staring at her until she's starting to act belligerent in the halls, and she starts to take her anger out verbally on an innocent boy walking by. This whole scene is given Aries placement with a focus on moon vibes. Because no one is even paying Buffy attention and she's venting all this out of anger and then taking it out on others. Like, I was like, wow, this is me. Getting mad at people for no reason. People are like, what the fuck are you doing? They arrive on another hall, stopping at Xander's locker so he can retrieve the items, commenting on how she could have any guy in school, but she wants Owen. Xander taking this opportunity to, of course, remind her and all of us that he's into Buffy and he could be that guy. But Buffy isn't paying attention because here comes Owen walking up to her. He asks where she was last night. Buffy gives the excuse that her watch broke and that they don't have any clocks in her house, so she didn't know what time it was or even what day. Him being cute tells her, I thought I was the only one that happened to. Then he asks her, how about we try again for tonight? He pulls out his watch, which is an old school pocket watch on a chain, very Giles, and hands it over to Buffy. I'll even lend you my watch. Xander watches them in disgust as Buffy perks up out of her mood and takes it. Tonight, you and me, she says to Owen. Well, we can invite the chess club, but they get rowdy, Owen says as we see Xander look down at the watch on his wrist that displays the cartoon Tweety bird. Buffy tells Owen, no, it's just that she's heard him and Cordelia were together last night and sort of all over each other. Owen tells her that he danced with her a couple times and comments on how she's a little grabby with a look of displeasure on his face that he wasn't into it. Buffy doils in her head about how if she moves this and pushes that back, then sure, she can be there. Owen asks how 7, Buffy agreeing, and Owen taking the moment to be cutesy once more, pointing to the 7 on his watch in her hand, saying, that's when the little hand is there. Oh, Buffy says, between the 7 and the 8. He walks off telling her that he'll see her then. Buffy stands in awe, commenting, tonight, isn't that so? Xander saying what as if he'd not been listening. Me and Owen, she says as she walks off, him lingering behind to lean against his locker, stating, yeah, so it is. Sure is so. I just wanted to say drop it, Xander, in general, because Xander needs to calm down with this fucking Buffy obsession that he's got going on. Like, she's over here swooning over another guy. You need to let it go. I've never noticed upon watching him before, and I don't know if you really paid attention, but Xander's locker has like a 3-dimensional hand coming out of it, like glued to the locker. It's reaching out. I was like, what the fuck is this? But either way, I also wrote that Xander will do anything to deter Buffy from this date. Also, why is your watch Tweety bird? What the fuck?
Yes,
he's all
lots
like,
of
I'm in
questions.
8th grade still. Okay, he probably got that in 5th grade and has been wearing it ever since. He's broke as a joke. We see Giles in his office listening to classical music, having tea, and honestly looking a bit tired of researching, as Buffy crashes in, disrupting him with a, hey, how's it going? All right, he starts to say. Oh, that's great, Buffy says, also adding, I see we're still working on that anointed one problem. That'll probably take a few days, right? I mean, that's one obscure prophecy. He says that there are quite a few interpretations, trying to inform her further, but she cuts him off again, saying, so tonight's looking pretty slow, right? Probably best to relax, regroup. No big disasters coming. That is so good. I will see you tomorrow then. Bye. And she runs out of the room. Giles, left wondering what the fuck even just happened, remarks to himself, she is the strangest girl, and gets back to his work. Down below in the master's lair, we hear him once more speaking out to his vampire minions, congratulating them on doing well and how everything is in place. And once the night's work is done, he will have a mighty ally. This will bring him one step closer to being free from his mystical prison. Us not seeing him really the past couple of episodes get the shot of him fondling the hand with the force field imprisoning him. He goes on to finalize that he's been trapped down there so long he's forgotten what it's like up on the surface. But there will be time enough to remember once he rules it. The entitlement. He tells the vampires that if the Slayer tries to stop them, kill her, even if that means risking their own lives in the process, and not to fail in bringing him the anointed. He knows they won't disappoint him and whips out a hand by the vampire's head, scaring him only to catch a bug. Because as we know, the master always striking some fear in them, a gentle reminder of his power to harm them if they do fail. And of course, we are reminded of rest in peace, Colin's eye. In Buffy's room that evening, we see Buffy and Willow going through potential outfits for her official date with Owen. Willow holds up 2 choices against Buffy as Xander sits on her bed listening to if Buffy wants to appear outfit number 1, shy, coy, and naive, a short pink dress with small red florals, or outfit number 2, unrestrained, insatiable, and aggressive. Also a short dress with bold colorings and pop art style florals. Xander gets up walking toward the closet saying that Owen is a shut-in and probably doesn't like the overly assertive look, definitely more into the watchtower versus enormous slut, He pulls out of the closet something no one should ever wear or even have in their closet while living in Southern California. Seriously, why does she have this large puffy thing? But regardless, it is a large puffy body-length snow coat and hideous ski cap. The ear flaps will bring out your ass, he says, smirking. Buffy looks over to Willow, who is shaking her head all sorts of no, and says, maybe I should mix and match. Grabs 2 of her lipsticks off the dresser and says, okay, guy's opinion. Which lip would Owen like better, the red or the peach? Xander sarcastically tells her,
oh, you mean for kissing you and then telling all of his friends how easy you are so the whole school loses respect for you and then talks behind your back.
Buffy and Willow stare at him in silence. He breaks the silence with,
the red's fine.
Thanks. I'll go with the peach.
she states as she smears it on. Willow hands her an actually cute short dress, because this is all Buffy owns apparently, because it's another fashionable short dress. And it's a light champagne gold color. Here, put this on, she tells her. Willow be dressing the way she does, and she got the audacity to be giving Buffy the cutest outfit. Like, Willow, why don't you borrow some of Buffy's clothes? Ain't that what a girl's supposed to do?
I know. That is a really good point, actually. I'm like, don't you want to dress yourself
Willow would
like
look
that?
so cute. Maybe one day we'll see Willow get out of her element and dress a little wild and free. Who knows? I do.
Let's hope.
They both look to Xander once more, who says, well, you're not bothering me. They push him over to the opposite side of the room where he's forced to stand with his back turned to them so Buffy can change. Willow asks Buffy where he's taking her, to which she doesn't know. Where do young kids even go these days? Willow and her discuss classic options like movie, party. Buffy slips on her clothes and the dress during this. As Buffy finishes putting on the second boot, we hear a thing falling on Buffy's dresser, and Xander is seen fondling Buffy's jewelry box, which features a small mirror in its lid, where he's been using it to catch a peek. The two look at him, trying to figure out what's happening. As he turns around nervously, the doorbell downstairs rings, and we are broken from the slap Xander shouldn't be receiving in this moment, Buffy declaring out loud, grabbing her jacket, that's Owen, and they rush out of the room. Before moving along, we have to pause and discuss this disgust right here, because Xander Lavelle Harris, they trust you, Xander, and they leave you in the room with them while Buffy changes, and you pull this shit. I get it, you're a boy and it's 1997, but through a 2024 lens, this is super skeezy, and my whole note sheet is just a page of consistent fuck off Xander. But like, how skeezy of him, like Buffy said last, or in which she's like, you were completely and totally one of the girls, and they're treating him as such, and he's being a douchebag. I get it, because most boys probably would try to do that. I don't think I would have that much disrespect for my friend to be trying to sneak peek. You might as well be sitting at her bedroom with binoculars every night watching her change, or sneaking into the girls' locker room, like...
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely took notice of it. And I was like, I mean, come on. And on top of it, you really want to do that with Buffy as your friend, knowing what she's capable of? I feel like if she would have seen you, she would have probably been tempted to slay your ass, and you're not even a fucking vampire.
Right. Should have been like, you can wear the peach lipstick to your funeral. Downstairs, we see Buffy pull the front door open to reveal Giles standing there, and Buffy states, that's Giles. Funny, because I know we went on our tangent about that, but the scene ends with, that's Owen. And then she opens the door in the next clip and she's like, that's Giles. Which she says, we need to talk, sounding alarmed. Buffy's not home, she says as she tries to close the door on him, but he comes in anyway, stating that his calculations might not be off as far as he thought, showing her a folded newspaper, which Buffy reads the clip he's facing at her, 5 die in van accident. Out of the ashes of 5 shall rise. This one, the prophecy, the 5 have died, Giles states, tapping the paper. Buffy goes on to say, in a car crash. Giles adding he understands it doesn't quite follow, but one of which was creepy guy Andrew Boba T, who had been sought by police for questioning and a double murder and maybe the anointed one. He starts to add which morgue their bodies have been taken to, and Buffy cuts him off, asking, why do you want to hurt me? He is confused, letting out an, I beg your pardon, just as Owen walks up to the open door that they all stand at. He greets everyone. Giles looks at Buffy. You have a date. Buffy telling him, yes, but I will return those overdue books by tomorrow, grabbing Owen to leave. Now you're not getting off that easily, he scolds. Owen looks at him saying, man, you really care about your work. Willow speaks up. Owen, while her and Xander usher him to the living room to speak on a couple of things for him and Buffy's date, leaving Buffy and Giles a moment to speak. Giles, back in scold mode, asks, another date? Don't you ever do anything else? Buffy loud whispers back to him, this is the first date. There's never been a date, okay? This is my maiden voyage. In the other room, we see Owen asks what, she doesn't like to dance? Xander replying, well, it's a little late for that. But you should know, Buffy doesn't like to be kissed. Actually, she doesn't even like to be touched. Xander, Willow tries to look at him, annoyed, stopping him, and finishing, in fact, don't even look at her. Fuck off, Xander. This is my 14th time saying it in the episode. Back at the door, Buffy tells Giles, look, we don't even know if this is anything. Him adding, well, no, we don't. Her continuing, and I haven't had a day off for a while. True, he agrees, and a cranky slayer is a careless slayer, she finishes. Giles whispers once more to her, maintaining a social life as a slayer is problematic at best. Buffy concludes that this is the 90s. Why can't she do both? Clark Kent has a job, and she just wants to go on a date. Giles tells her he supposes that it's a fairly slim lead. She offers him multiple thank yous, and she grabs her beeper from the side table and tells him she won't go far.
If the apocalypse comes, beep me.
Showing him the pink paging device. The three from the living room meet back with Buffy and Giles, and Owen asks if everything's cool. Buffy tells him they're all set to go, and Giles plays off that she will face a pretty hefty fine in the morning for her book fees. Owen looks confused as fuck because he just does not understand why Giles is there. They leave, and Willow asks if something is going on. He tells her maybe not, but he will head to the funeral home just in case, leaving to do so. Willow comments how this is bad and they should go along. Xander, misunderstanding, comments, yeah, and he doesn't trust Owen. He's got crazy eyes. Willow snaps at him. Xander, we should go with Giles. He might get in trouble. Oh, he's gone. He'll be fine, he tells her, and how he's super librarian, how everyone forgets that knowledge is the ultimate weapon. Here we also get the second iconic quote, apocalypse comes, beep me. Not the beeper, though. I remember my dad having a pager, too, in the 90s, and me playing it with all the time, and I used to love when my mom's number would come up across it, because she'd be like, all right, call me. And I'd be like, hey, Kathy, what's up? I thought it was cool how Buffy used that with Giles to basically win her argument over, even though like it's a loose-footed possible lead. She's like, Clark Kent has a job. Superman literally goes to work and then is out there saving the world. Same kind of for Batman. Batman runs a whole company and does all this stuff. But yet by night, he's out here fighting people and stuff. And he obviously seems to get both done. So she's like, I'm going to use like this to like hopefully cleverly convince Giles and like reach him in some way, to which it does. But unfortunately not for the best. Thankfully, Buffy makes it there in time, or will she?
No.
Well, we finally make it to the Bronze, where we hear Strong by Velvet Chain playing. Love this song. Buffy and Owen sit in a dimly lit, warm, comfortably furnished corner, talking about Emily Dickinson and her morbidity. Him relating to her quiet, sequestered, and uneventful life, Buffy is surprised that he resonates with that and doesn't get it. He goes on to say how it's his fault. He finds most girls frivolous and how there's more important things than dating. Buffy looks down at her pager and thinks he's bummed her out. He questions if he said anything wrong, and she tells him no, and then offers that they go share a dance. I love the Bronze's vibes. We've never seen this corner before. It's off to the left of where Buffy's always getting food and snacks, where the convenient bar is or whatever you want to call that. But I never really noticed it before. But it's got cute mood lighting and comfy vintage furniture. That velvet couch in general, it reminds me of the one from the Airbnb that I stayed in not long ago.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh shit, look at that. I don't know. It's just a vibe. I would totally see myself at the Bronze and do all that stuff. I would have totally just sat in this corner and like read books, hung out, like all the things. I'm like, where was this when I was a teenager?
People
What'd you say?
watch. I know. I said people watch, like just sat in the corner and kind of watched
Literally.
everybody. And yeah.
But I wanted to point out, too, that Buffy was checking her beeper, and I never really paid attention. It's played off as she's distracted with him, or like whenever she looks down, he thinks that he's upset her. But I really never noticed that she's like checking to see if she's needed. She's like on alert still, holding her beeper, which is interesting. She's on this date with Owen and she's supposed to be happy, but is she in her head still about it? This contextually just came across me. Buffy actually really does care, because if that were me, like my cell phone would be in my bag and I'd be like focused on this boy or like dancing or whatever. But I thought it was cute that she's actually taking notice.
I didn't know if it was like an intuitive thing, if she was like checking it like, oh shit, I feel like something's
sure.
up or something, like if that was the case.
Anyways, out on the floor, they dance and he notates how it's weird how one moment he's got Buffy figured out, and then the next, it's like she's two different people. Of course. Really? Which do you like better, she asks. I'll let you know, he replies. We see Cordelia walk in with girls, and she immediately takes notice to Buffy and Owen on the dance floor. Aren't there laws against this sort of thing? She asks out loud and walks up to them. Fashion moment for Cordelia, 90s crimped hairstyle. Like, as a hairdresser, I approve this, but not for 2024. And also Owen's comments about how she's two people, indirectly not realizing that this is the exact situation. Owen, look at you.
Yes.
Here all alone, she exclaims as she walks up to them. Cordelia, I'm here with Buffy, he says, nodding to Buffy with his head. Oh, Cordelia says, you want to dance? He declines and mentions that he's still here with Buffy. Cordelia jabs that he is so good to help the needy. Buffy takes this moment to tell her that her and Owen would like to be alone, and for that to happen, she would have to go somewhere that's away. Spinning around in front of her, taking claim back to Owen and their dance. Cordelia squints at her and says to Owen, when he's ready for the big leagues, let her know, and walks off. Round 2, 1 from Buffy. Ding, ding, ding. Buffy shares a smile with Owen as they finish their dance. We cut to the Sunnydale Cemetery. Giles is pulling up to the morgue's entrance. He grabs a bag, getting out, and nervously stares at the graveyard's headstones as he moves towards the doors, because he is not transgender. He pauses, feeling something's watching him, and he turns back to look once more at nothing but headstones and trees. When he turns back towards the entrance, he meets the eyes with a vampire standing before him and growling. As another one walks up, he's letting out an audible, "Damn." Giles pulls out a cross and waves it at them. They hiss, and he rushes inside, runs down the hall, checking doors that are locked as they enter after him. I'm just now actually realizing, too, for the first time in this episode, even though it stated that the brethren vampires are actually here waiting for the anointed to rise, I thought it was interesting that apparently the actual anointed one is somewhere in the morgue. And I had never really paid attention to that because there's so much going on. But I clearly
Yeah.
also think that they were waiting on Andrew to rise as well, since they turned him into a vampire. I guess since Buffy's been killing so many of the brethren off, that now he's supposed to be like a replacement. He's going to join the Order of Aurelius with the Master. So they were waiting on him to rise, since he's like a fucking biblical freak or whatever the hell it is. He's like, time to get the pork and beans
Literally.
ready. Master said, I'm cooking pork and beans for you to come home to dinner. We get a quick flash to the bronze where Owen and Buffy still dance, and he asks if she's having fun, and she tells him yes, and she's almost like a normal girl. Cut right back to the morgue. Giles finds an unlocked door and enters the mortuary autopsy room. Quickly looking around, Giles slides a file cabinet in front of the door. As the knob begins to jiggle and move around, he half-assed throws other items in front of it and moves over to a window that is barred just as Willow and Xander's faces appear and give him a good jump scare. They open up the window and he asks what they're doing there. Xander says that they saw two guys go in after him. The two conclude that they are vampires. Giles says the two should leave, that they're in harm's way. Xander saying, this looks like a job for Buffy. Giles comments how she has a beeping thing, looks around and sees no phone. Look, well, we'll get her. Just hang in there. They tell him as they close the window and leave, locking Giles inside. Like, I'm telling you, I'm going to try to help him. And Giles states as he looks around, do hurry. He's scared. Okay, 1. How these vamps gonna let Giles run up inside and get all the way into this room to start barricading it? The Master definitely needs new lackeys. Number 2, what the fuck even is this barricade? The coat hanger wobbles back into its original state when Giles goes to throw it in front of the door. It stands right back up the way it was. It doesn't even barricade anything. The chair that he slides in front of the door is going to do nothing. Like, the filing cabinet is literally it. That is the one thing. And this is a filing cabinet against demons or breaking in here that have crazy strength. We watched them motherfuckers pull down that bar in the Harvest, like that metal door frame that Buffy and Jesse and all them were in, and they just like peeling that thing down. But he think of a file cabinet. I mean, I know he wasn't there to see that, but he is for a file cabinet and expect that. Like, I don't know. I get it. That's all he's got. But like, Giles.
It was like the lack of trying got to me. I was like, I mean, come on. I know like it might be the first obvious thing, but I would have spent a little more time being like, what the fuck else is there? Like, at this point, is there a broomstick that I can like wedge between the file cabinet and the door? Like, something's got to get.
Well, Giles is
like, what are you
clearly
doing?
panicking, but also the jump scares that him and Willow give. And poor Giles in this moment, he is just stressed the fuck out. He's already out here by himself too. At least he knows that help should be on the way soon if he does not die. I guess we'll find out. Back at the bronze, Buffy and Owen stand around. He offers to get her something to eat, and she says sure, because, you know, Buffy's always trying to eat something at the bronze, but make it something fattening, and he goes to do so. Cordelia watches from across the room at their interactions and speaks to her friend on how she's in disgust over the travesty of Owen's choices, and how she's never seen a girl just throw herself at a guy like that. In this moment, we see Angel enter from a door behind Cordelia and walk by her and pause looking around the room. She eyes him up and down and says,
hello, salty goodness.
Pick up the phone, dial 911. That boy is going to need some serious oxygen when I am through with him. And she starts to walk up to him. He treads off and makes his way over to Buffy. Cordelia, watching this, scoffs confused and asks herself, why is this happening to me? Sorry, Cordelia. Buffy's our main star girl, not you. It's called Buffy the Vampire Slayer, not Cordelia goes on dates with multiple men every episode. That statement that she says, hello, salty goodness. I want you to remember that. I'm going to bring it back again later, full circle. Anyways, back over with Angel and Buffy, they greet one another, and he mentions how he was hoping he would find her there. Her eyes light up, and she's happy, asking, you were? Yeah, there's some serious stuff happening tonight. You need to be out there, he starts. Her face then frowns, and she is annoyed, saying, oh no, not you two. He grabs her arm, stopping her from walking off. What do you know, he asks. Prophecy, anointed one, yada, yada, yada. So you know, fine. I just thought I'd warn you, he says. Warn me? She moves around, looking over to Owen. You see that guy? He came here to be with me. Angel, looking disappointed, states, you're here on a date? Yes. She turns around to face him. Why is it such a shock to everyone? Owen walks up, bringing Buffy a muffin. Angel smirks at him, reveling in this moment of awkward interaction. Buffy introduces the two. Owen asking where he knows Buffy from, Angel stating work, to which Owen curiously asks, "Oh, you work?" Just as Willow and Xander run up to them shouting her name. Owen stating, "Oh, look, you guys just show up everywhere. Interesting." Xander looks at Angel and asks, what is he doing here? Angel replying, "My guess is the same thing that you are." Buffy with wide ass takes control, saying, "Excuse me, what are any of you doing here?" Xander starts to tell her, but Willow jabs him in the belly and they remark how they thought it would be fun to make it a double date. Buffy remarks on how she didn't know that the two were seeing each other. They awkwardly state that they just knew it would happen eventually. Owen is confused why everyone is there to barge in on their time, and Xander mentions how they should all go somewhere together. Buffy comments on how that sounds nice, but also not, and how her and Owen are enjoying being, well, her and Owen. Trying to walk away with him, Xander stops and remarks again how it would be cool if they all went to the Sunnydale funeral home. Willow adding and looking at Buffy with wide eyes.
I've always wanted to go there.
Owen gets fascinated and says, "Oh, actually, that sounds kind of cool. You think we could all sneak in?" Xander mentioning how they saw some guys in there before, looked like they were having fun, and makes pointed eye contact with Buffy. Just like Willow, she looks at Angel, then back at Owen, realizing her night is now set to a different course. She tells Owen she has to go. He's confused. He thought that they'd all go together, her informing him that he can't, and she'll come back in just a little while. He grows worried and pulls her aside to ask if she's trying to ditch him. She assures him 100% that's a no, bringing up his remarks earlier about how she's like two different people, how one of them is having a really good time, but the other one just has to go for a bit. She promises that she'll return and walks off from him. She turns back and comes back to lay a kiss on him. Then her and Xander and Willow leave the bronze as Angel is seen witnessing this display. Him and Owen watch as they exit, Owen commenting on how she is the strangest girl. Back at the funeral home, we see the gang enter and Buffy asks which way. Willow telling her the room's around back. They head that way and everything looks quiet. No more vampires around. They arrive at a dead-end hallway. They go to turn around and there's Owen giving us yet another jump scare. And he's saying, "Oh, this is so cool." "Owen, you can't be here," Buffy states. He sarcastically says, "Oh, and I suppose you guys are allowed?" He gets excited again, asking, "What are we doing here? Are we going to see a dead body?" Buffy, also full of sarcasm, states, "Probably several," and looks at Xander and Willow telling them to watch him. She walks off and he asks if she's mad, and Willow claims that she just wants to go make sure there's no guards so that they don't get in trouble. "Good thinking," he says as Xander looks at Willow and tells her the same remark. "Yeah, good thinking." Buffy walks around the halls and comes down to the room that Giles had been in. The door is broken down and the room is left a mess. "Giles?" she calls out. She looks around. We see the bars on the window are pried open and bent. I don't even understand why they were pried open and bent, just to throw out here. The vampires didn't exit out that way, and Giles didn't do that. So are they just trying to show that these vampires can break down the bars too? But like, for what purpose? I don't get it.
Probably.
Because we all know that Giles is in that room still, as we're about to find out in 2 seconds. She walks over by the wall that are lined with metal doors where bodies are stored. I have no clue what those things are called, but they're storage containers for dead bodies. She finds the cross that Giles had on a tray and picks it up just as one of the metal doors swings open and Giles slides out on the metal body tray, giving Buffy our third jump scare this episode. "Giles," she says, relieved. "Oh, it is you," he states. "Good." She asks what happened and he informs her that 2 of the brethren came in there to get him and that he was more of a match for them. Meaning, Buffy asks, "I hid," he replies, and adds, looking down at the sheet-covered body he's straddling underneath him, "But this chap was good enough to bunk with me until they went away." He climbs off the table. Buffy asks, were they here for the prophecy thing? He tells her that that's what they need to find out, if they were here to collect him, possibly give him something, and how it's all vague, but the anointed could be long gone. But he may not be, she says. Him saying they have to find out, she agrees and tells him she just needs to go get Owen and the others out of harm's way first. He is shocked and asks her, "Owen, you brought us a date?" She remarks, I love how I'm over here trying to deal with Giles' voice. "You brought us a date." She remarks she didn't bring him, he just came. Giles retorts that when he said that she could be the Slayer and have a social life, he didn't mean at the same time. "I know. I'll get rid of him," she says. Giles claims that she can't send him out there alone. If the brethren are still lingering, he ushers as if he will go out there to help them. She says, no. If Owen sees him there, then he'll have more question that she's ready for, but she'll take care of it. She leaves the room and goes out to find the others in the hall. Willow asks if everything's okay, and she confirms. Xander asks if they're leaving, Owen claiming that they're not even done looking around yet. Buffy agrees. He's right, and how they should find a nice, quiet, safe, fun room to look around in. They come to a door labeled Observation Room, and Owen states how they tried that room, but the door was locked. Buffy, facing him, reaches for the doorknob behind her and snaps it down with her strength, breaking it and unlocking it, clearing her throat to cover the noise, saying, "No, it's not." Opening it, and they enter. Owen saying that they might not find much in there. That's the plan, Buffy says. He asks what, confused. She says she has to go now, to the bathroom. She tells them to just be quiet if they hear anything, like security guards. Looking at her friends, telling them, then barricade the door. In the autopsy room, we get shots of Buffy and Giles opening up the metal doors to each of the storage shelf to search them. Finding nothing, Giles stating that he has to be somewhere. Back in the observation room, we see Willow and Xander moving furniture in front of the door and stacking various items on top of it. Listen, here we go again with the shitty barricades. Giles must be given lessons on them on how to do this. I'm laughing my ass off at Allison Hannigan, who plays Willow. Setting that small candy dish on the couch is like extra jokey as fuck. But then they put the pillow down. I'm dead. Here comes Xander with the lampshade too. Like, I'm done. Like, no longer in the world of Buffy the Vampire Slayer does anybody need to be trying to barricade anything.
It's not their strong suit.
Fun
I'll
point,
say
though, I
that
can't
much.
think, and I'm like thinking of this in the moment, I cannot think of a single episode where they barricade something in a future episode, but I'm like going to have flashbacks to this, and I hope they have learned. Owen questioning what they're even doing. So are we, Owen. So are we. Willow mentions, it's just in case. Owen looks around the room and we can see a full-length curtain spread across the wall. He finds a cord and pulls on it to open them and sees a glass divider before them, which he lets out, oh my. And Xander and Willow move beside him to also see what he is seeing. Back in the room, Buffy and Giles come to the last body case and it's empty. Giles states that he must be gone, Buffy adding, she guesses this is where they keep all the bodies, right? In that same motion, we jump back to the other three before the glass as Owen states to them, I read a lot about death, but never really seen a dead body before. We get a shot of a body laying on a table covered by a white sheet and a hand exposed hanging out from underneath it. Owen's mouth drops and he asks, do they usually move? We see the hand start twitching and Willow and Xander move closer to the glass to observe further. The hand reaches up to grab the sheet and uncover itself just as the body sits up and we see it's Andrew, the creepy judgment guy, displaying a vampiric face. They are all stunned. He gets off the table and looks down at his body, newfound sense of power. Andrew looks up to the three, looking back at him and says,
I have been judged.
What's going on? Owen asks. As the vampire moves towards them, he headbutts the glass, and the glass smashes to pieces. Well, I guess this barricade isn't effective and not going to help for sure now, as this motherfucker just gained access to your room by breaking his skull. Giles and Buffy hear this in the other room and immediately grow alarmed. Oh no, she calls out, running out of the room towards the commotion. Andrew thinks this is a lovely time to continue his devout faith and preaching and says,
He is risen in me. He fills my head with sorrow.
As the three move to unblock the door, Willow moves the candy dish out the way and takes a few bites, I guess. Andrew continues,
Pork and beans. Pork and beans.
as he crosses the broken glass divider, entering the room. I can smell you. Okay, what the fuck is up with pork and beans shit?
I
Are we
don't
even surprised at this
know.
point, though? I'm not. They exit the room and he walks after them, stating, he can smell them. He'll suck the blood from their hearts. The three run into Buffy in the hall. Oh, he's in there, they say. She tells him to run and she'll take care of it. We can hear him coming as he sings a hymn down the hallway. Willow and Xander and Owen arrive at the exit doors. Vampires shut the metal doors to block them from exiting. Willow states she thinks he's coming this way and they run off toward the dead end together. Owen calling out, oh God, this is too much. He's getting upset. Buffy runs back to meet Giles, asking if he brought anything. A steak, perhaps? He hands her one and she tries to instruct him to go get the others to safety. Just as Andrew comes in the room, grabs Buffy from behind, she screams as he throws her across the room. Giles screaming her name, the other three can clearly hear all of this. Owen shouts out, somebody's got to help Buffy, as he runs off toward the noise. Owen, Willow calls out as her and Xander chase after him. Andrew moves over to them, saying that they told him about him as he was sleeping. Giles pushes across to his face. He leans back, growling, why does he hurt me? Hits Giles' cross from his hand, grabs Giles and slings him out of the way of Buffy, him crashing into a wall and pressing buttons that start the fire in the cremation chamber. Picking up Buffy, we see Owen run into the room, pick up a tray and smack Andrew across the back with it, causing him to drop. Andrew stands up and grabs Owen by the throat and moves in with his fangs to bite him. Owen struggles to grab an urn and smashes it over his head as he falls to the ground. He moves over to Buffy thinking he's defeated him, telling her, you see that? He tried to bite me. What a sissy. Okay, brave Owen, we see you. Andrew stands up behind him and grabs his jacket, slams one of the open metal doors into the back of his head as Buffy screams, no. Dead, Andrew replies, and drops Owen's lifeless body off to the side of him. Buffy kicks him clear across the room over at a table on wheels. He gets back to his feet just as Buffy moves to the opposite side of the slab, pushes his end up to meet his face, slinging him back once more. She climbs onto the table and does a flip across it and is now getting into hand-to-hand combat. The two exchange punches. You killed my date, she screams at him and continues to whoop his ass. Xander and Willow run in and see Owen is fine and waking up. Willow calls out to Buffy that Owen is, Xander stopping her saying, just give her a sec. As they continue to watch Buffy just go straight ham on this vampire, punching him, kicking him, letting out her anger, the vampire states it's her turn and goes to leap at her, but she moves and he lands on the table as it rolls the slab conveniently aligned with the cremation door opening and directly into the incinerator's flames. We hear him start to scream as Giles slams the door shut and locks him inside, burning away into his death that didn't cost $2,000. Owen fully regains consciousness and asks if anyone has 60 aspirin, rubbing his head. Sounding like us over here talking about some 60 aspirin. Buffy runs over to him as he questions what happened to the guy, and Buffy tells him that they scared him away. She apologizes for the date not going exactly the way he had in mind, him admitting that he agrees, thinking he thought they'd end the night with Ben and Jerry's. She looks at him hopeful, offering that they still could. Him disoriented states no, that he thinks he'll just walk home. He looks around for a moment. Which way is home? She says she'll get him there, but he denies needing her help as Willow and Xander come over and say that they'll help him get home safe. He leaves with them as Buffy looks on. Giles comes up behind her, starting to give her some words of support, but she throws up a hand and tells him, don't. We fade into the next day at school, where Buffy walks with Xander and Willow, asking if Owen said anything about her on the way home. They mention he was pretty incoherent, but no such luck with mentions of the buff. She states to them that she totally blew it last night. Xander goes on to say, now what you need is a guy who already knows your deepest, darkest secret. Someone like... Who could he be talking about? Owen, Buffy says as we see Owen walking up to the group. Willow helps the situation by saying, well, this is our stop, grabbing Xander and forcefully pulling him away. Xander's like sipping on an apple juice box and he's like, no, like, no, Buffy's mine. No, she's not. Buffy is left with Owen as they exchange hellos and then a pause of silence as melancholy music plays in the background. Well, this is going well, she states. He begins, I don't really know how to say this, but about last night, she interrupts him saying, you don't even have to. I'm sure you were pretty freaked out. He agrees with a totally, but he was wondering when he could see her again. She looks at him, asking him to repeat that in her non-hopeful ear, smiling. He goes on to tell her she's the coolest. She's stunned and asks, really? He states that last night was incredible and how he's never thought almost getting killed would make him feel so alive. So that's why you want to be with me, she says, starting to walk off as he follows along with her. Well, yeah, he tells her, then lists off various ways they can do adrenaline junkie activities that are in the realm of danger. She stops him, realizing now what she has to do. She beats herself up and questions that she's actually about to do this, giving him the classic, don't take this personally, it's not you, it's me, and goes on to tell him that they really should just remain friends. Him bummed, and her on the verge of light tears, walks off from her as this is not what he expected to hear. In this moment, we see Giles appear behind Buffy as Owen disappears into a crowd of students, taking in the obvious situation. She looks at him and then takes a seat on the fountain, and he joins her. He tells her a story of when he was 10, his father told him he was destined to be a watcher, just as he had been and his mother before him. Buffy asks if he was thrilled beyond measure. He disagrees, saying that he had his own definite plans for his future, but how his father gave him a very tiresome speech about responsibility and sacrifice. Sacrifice, huh? She questioned. Buffy's so sad in this moment. Like, I want to cry talking about it. She just looks so defeated. He tells her that Owen seems like a nice lad. She agrees and lets him know that he wants to be Danger Man, and how 2 days in her world, Owen really would get himself killed. Or she would. Or someone else, she says as she looks over to Giles, meaning him. Giles, realizing also that she means him, informs her that he went to the funeral home on his own free will. She states that she should have been there and she blew it. He tells her that he has volumes on prophecy, predictions, lore, and he doesn't have an instruction manual, that they must feel their way as they go along. And he must say that as a slayer, she's doing pretty well. She gives him a smile and says, well, at least I did stop that prophecy thing from coming true. You did, he agrees. No more anointed one. And how he would imagine that the master, wherever he resides, is having a fairly bad day himself. Then the two exchange a quick laugh as the scene cuts to the master sitting at his throne. He recites the prophecy he'd read in the beginning again.
And in this time will come the anointed, and the slayer will not know him. She will not stop him.
He stands up, finishing,
And he will lead her into hell.
He walks over to vampires standing around him, bends down onto one knee to be eye level with a small boy, the one that had been on the bus of 5, and he says to him, welcome, my friend, with a chuckle as we fade to black on the little boy's face. Here endeth the episode. Okay.
Breath. The episode. I
Listen, my first thing I
cannot.
gotta ask you
I've
for our
watched.
first off on our closing thoughts on the episode-ish, because we about to get into some more stuff. What was your reaction to the reveal that the little boy was actually the anointed one?
First and foremost, so much shit had happened in the episode that the first time I watched the episode, I had to watch this episode 3 times, just as a disclaimer. The first time I usually just absorb it. The second time I'm taking my notes, so I already know I'm going to be like spending a lot of the minutes looking down at my paper or whatever. But this time I had to watch it an additional time because when the boy came up at the end, I was like, who in the fuck is this?
Yes,
Like, I forgot
His
about
name's
his
Colin.
whole.
His name is Colin, by the way.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, I was like, I think I even wrote it in my notes because the second time I watched it, I was like, who the fuck is this kid and where did he come from? And then by the time I watched it the third time, I was like, oh, I see what's
You're like, they all
going
got
on.
the
Like,
anointed
I
one
can.
gone. And then you're like, wait a minute.
I know. I was like, I'm so confused. Where did this child come from? But yes, now
Yes, he's a
I'm
little
with
boy
it.
from the buzz. I thought that was interesting. And I also think it's funny that they named him Colin. I really thought about it this time around, mostly because me and you were commentating and your quote from The Harvest, whenever he's like, you got something in your eye, and he like jabs his eye. That vampire's name was also Colin. I'm like, can't these writers come up with another name? Oh, that's the whole thing.
It's Colin
Yes, it's the new Colin. It's
resurrected.
the anointed Colin.
It's
I
the
can't wait
Colin
for
with
you to
both
see
eyes.
the journey of like the anointed one. Cause like, and just to like close it off too, like with the fact that you're saying you had to watch it 3 times and by like the final time you were like, oh, this is conclusive. He's the anointed one. He's a vampire. That
Yes,
boy
full
was
circle
turned.
moment.
Just so that way you're not like thinking he's just some gifted individual. He's a vampire.
No, I think. Okay. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I was like, what's going on here?
Any other thoughts in the episode overall then?
I really liked this episode a lot. I really, really did. I enjoyed it. It kept me like, I was scared. I was really the most worried about Giles for some reason. Like the whole episode, I was like, I don't know. He about to get himself into something. And then as soon as he said something about going to the funeral home, I was like, if he
Episode
dies,
5.
like, I know that's the stretch. I know he's not gonna die because he's obviously, like, a main character, but at the same time, I was like, it would be, the plot twist of all time if they were just like, "You know what? We'll get Giles out here. That's it.
They could always send
Episode 5,
another
done."
watcher.
Or they'll just resurrect him as a child.
Yes, they'll name
Colin
him
number
Colin.
3.
Colin Giles. Because you know Giles is his last name because his name is Rupert.
Oh, yeah. Why do they go by his last name? I guess because they don't wanna
For
say
sure.
Rupert.
I mean, like technically it's a school setting. So like when you introduce him, like most people are in the hallways probably calling the librarian Mr. Giles. So that just iconically becomes his
Yeah.
name in general. But his name is Rupert Giles.
Yeah.
Most people aren't identifying teachers by their first name. So it just became like a common like lingo just to say Giles. And Giles sounds 10 times cooler for sure.
It
I know I
does,
prefaced
yeah.
at the beginning of the episode about how the episode is like one of my favorites across the board. And it always reminds me of like the back to the beginning vibes. But this one really does feel like a true Buffy episode and it is up to par and matches with a few of the other ones in this one. It's not so much a monster of the week episode. It actually contributes so much to the plot line, all that good stuff.
Yes, and then we're left with the cliffhanger.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
I
that is
like
pretty
that
much a
element.
cliffhanger. I didn't really think about that. I mean, it's like not hardcore hanging off the cliff. We're like got a foot hang. We're sitting on the ledge, dangling our feet.
Yeah, they don't leave you on like a to be continued screen or anything, but it still has the element of like,
Yeah,
oh
like what's going
shit,
to come of that, which
what
I'm going
the
to get into in a
fuck's going
second.
on?
But really quick, I want to dip
Ugh.
into metaphor. Just as we saw in The Witch, this episode, Buffy struggles with trying to find normality in her life. This time in the dating scene, the theme once again demonstrates that she has not yet fully accepted her Slayer role and she wants a normal life, so she tries to go on dates versus into battle with Giles. These diversions keep her from her destiny and tempt her to leave the chosen path. This is the first episode to offer as such and won't be the last. Buffy recognizes by the end that the normality she seeks is unattainable and she mustn't let dating interfere with her destiny. We see that her chosen path alienates her from a normal life, which creates almost a split personality to which Buffy will always have, to some extent, a Slayer side and a human side. The isolation that is inevitable along her journey really hinders her human side. We do have to commend Buffy here, though, for making a mature decision in order to keep Owen and potential others safe and understanding in some new way her position when it comes to dating and trying to have a normal life. The fact that in the ending, her and Giles share heart to heart and have now come to a new connection between one another mirrors her words in the first episode. Go ahead, prepare me. She tells Giles then and in this ending speech, He is doing as such and letting her find her own way and come to these conclusions on her own in that preparation, only to commend her in the way for still arriving at the necessary realization and the reality of their unique situation and what is indeed necessary for her role as a slayer. My favorite part of this episode is how it opens with Giles critiquing her on fighting vampires and her style as a slayer, but by the end they arrive more so on the same page and he tells her that she's doing just fine as a slayer. He's given her the room to do it in her own way essentially, but now for not the lack of his own guidance. We will see as we move forward on Buffy's journey just how far she's willing to go and how her acceptance of being the Slayer affects her future decisions. And I thought that was like pretty legit that we're already seeing that dynamic change between the two. And Buffy makes the ultimate mature decision here, like I stated in that passage. I think that she is growing in her ways, and obviously she's still going to struggle and go around with different stuff. And there's going to be instances that have to come up, especially as we get into a couple episodes from now. But it's going to change the dynamic for everything. Xander was not wrong. If she's going to date in general, she needs to date somebody that knows her situation, can understand it, and also be adequately prepared for the situations that could arise versus someone that could just end up dead. Because Buffy made that decision, and that was, I don't know, I just can't say anything else besides the fact that that was super mature for her to see it in the moment and see he liked it for the danger element and just knowing that he was going to end up getting killed. And she didn't want that on her conscience. She didn't want to put anybody in harm's way. So Buffy really does care about other people, even if she doesn't all the time care about her Slayer duty. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Now for the fun stuff. As always, we got our shining Slayer. Mine is Buffy all around with an honorable mention to Owen because at the end he was like, I'm going to go help. I'm going to get my head smacked up. I need 60 aspirin.
I couldn't decode his motive because I was like, is he there just because there's like this thrill element of it? And of course there's other people there, so he's not like just very vulnerably by himself walking around in this funeral home. Or is he there because he was like, just in case something happens, I should be there. You know, like I couldn't tell if he was just like there literally because he's like a thrill seeking.
Right, which I think he was because Owen in
obviously.
general, to talk on him, because I haven't spoken solely on him the whole episode. He is that brooding type and he's sequestered to himself. He doesn't really hang out with other people, which is probably why he likes Buffy, because she's our outcast. Cordelia obviously is the limelight girl. If he wanted that kind of stuff, he would go towards her or be hanging out with people all the time. But he sits and reads books on like death and murder all the time. So that intrigues him whenever they bring up the funeral home. He's like, ooh, that sounds morbid and odd. I like that. And then he realizes, in fact, that Buffy's Slayer half that he's sensing as her dual personality is also a morbid and dark space. And he wants to meld with that. And then, of course, the whole situation that unfolds, he gets that danger and adrenaline junkie vibe. And he's like, oh, this is so out of my element than what I'm normally like attracted to. But it's in that realm of the strangeness and the odd occurrence, all the things like that.
It like fills a weird cup of his. Or
so, I mean, I
something
think
like
that's
that.
why it alludes to him changing up his whole dynamic generally, because it makes him feel alive, even though the instance is going to probably kill him. Most definitely. Do you have a shining Slayer or is it Owen?
And it's not actually. Obviously, I think we've stated this before, but the most obvious one could always be Buffy. So I'm going to try to be the person that steers away from that and not be, because I know there's going to be episodes where there's just no ifs, ands, or buts. It's Buffy. But in this particular one, I felt like, oddly enough, mine was Xander and Willow, because they showed up and they were really trying to respect Buffy's boundaries on having a normal life. And she's out at a date with Owen, but they're at the same time desperately needing to be like, bitch, we need to go. So they had to like genuinely put some thought into how the fuck are we going to get this bitch out of the date without being so obvious. Yeah, and basically just overstepping your boundary and saying, fuck your date, you have other shit you need
I have
to
to point this out to you. You have to clip Xander from that. Because even though he's along for the ride, for sure, Willow is the one that points out we should follow Giles. You're saying this all and I'm clicking in my head. Oh yeah, Willow is like actually the savior.
You're right. However, you have to note, though, that Xander was willing to go along with the reference of a double date, knowing full well that Willow could very easily, like, double down on that.
Yeah,
like
for sure. Yeah. I mean, Xander's right there in neck and neck with her, but
I get what you're saying.
And honestly, if they hadn't have showed up, Giles obviously hid. So, I mean, he would have just loomed in that little chamber until he was like, okay, it's clearly been more than 7 hours. I know the vampires ain't just sitting out there. I was about to say breathing, but they're not. They're just sitting out there waiting for him. But no, but Willow and Xander definitely came to the thing to follow him. And then they went and got Buffy. And if they hadn't have done that, then the whole situation wouldn't have happened. Honestly, it would have been worse because not only, I mean, obviously Buffy feeded him in the end, but Andrew would have just left the morgue with the brethren. And not only would the master have the anointed one, but he'd have all this, fucking psychotic vampire hanging out with him as well. So it would be like the dual energy, but
Yeah.
no, he was meant to die. But I like your Shining Slayer being Willow and Xander because they definitely did basically fuel to save the day energy. Yeah. Moving on to
Yes.
quote of the episode.
My favorite quote, I know there was like a lot of iconic quotes in this episode, but my favorite quote was when Buffy said to Cordy,
Cordelia, Owen, and I would like to be alone right now, and for that to happen, you would have to go somewhere that's away.
Mine was Giles's abuse of sarcasm when he says that he'll just hop in his time machine and go back to ask the vampires to postpone their ancient prophecy so she can take in dinner on a show. You just don't expect Giles to say this shit, but we're seeing the writers give dialogue and fun quips to him just as much as they do the other characters because they're always having something
Hell
fun
yeah.
to say. And Giles is unique in New York. I also like when Buffy says to Owen at the beginning, so Emily Dickens, huh? And he's like, Dickinson. And she goes, she's good also. Like, just an honorable mention one, but overall, Giles,
yeah,
I was like, this is so funny.
I did make a note about that too, and I thought that was great. I was like, look at them making him like extra sarcastic now, because like Buffy has her puns or whatever, but here comes Giles like full-fledged being like, okay, well, let me change the whole world so you can go on this fucking date.
He's so smart ass. Giles, you don't realize how much you are just exactly like Buffy in that way. Like, she's clever and retortful, and so are you. What gave you the weekly
Yeah.
wig? The weekly wig.
Well, the most obvious would be Xander pulling his whole peeping Tom situation. I was like, come on, dude, why? Why you gotta... That was so early on in the episode. I was like, you're already wigging me out. This shit already happening. But it was between that and it was just the overall essence of the pork and beans guy.
Pork and beans. Pork and beans.
My weekly Wiggins was pork and beans. Just like the statement, pork and beans. Because what does that mean? I'll make mention
What?
that Andrew
What?
is actually a pretty scary vampire for season 1. We just mentioned what could have happened if, Buffy hadn't got there and he had gotten out and stuff. But with his hyperfixation on religion and stuff like that too, so what would have happened? But I just don't understand the pork and beans thing. I never have, and I don't know if I ever will. It's
was
food.
so
Like, I get pork and
random.
beans as a meal.
And then he followed it up with like, I smell you. And I'm like, are you trying to indicate that they smell like pork and beans?
He said
Like,
he's upset
so
because
many
Xander
words.
clearly had pork and beans for dinner because, as we mentioned a little bit ago with his Tweety Bird watch, he's poor. So that's what he has for dinner. It's either that or Buffy's
Well,
the pork
he's-
and the rest of them are his beans. I don't fucking know.
Pork and beans. Pork and beans.
For Slayerette predictions, I do want to ask you, and then obviously you can add if you have any other predicts that you want to throw out there. Now that part of the prophecy has been fulfilled and the anointed has risen and been delivered to the master, are you at all nervous with the fact that the prophecy states she will not know him and he will lead her into hell? What do you think this means for Buffy and the master?
I don't know. I'm going to safely predict what I think the overall energy I'm getting is that this is all leading to like a massive showdown between the master himself and Buffy. That's the only way I'm reading that. I'm like, oh, so you want her delivered to you like a special package. It seems to me like you want to take care of this yourself, not somebody else now, because before he was all stuck on the like, y'all better kill her. And now he's like, oh, we're going to lead her straight to hell. I'm like, well, you look a lot like hell, so I guess we're leading her straight to you.
I'll put it to you this way, without giving a spoiler, but to put a praying mantis bug that might bite your head off in your ear. The thing states that he will lead her into hell. That is his purpose. The master is trapped down below. So some way, some shape or
Yes.
form, he can't leave. Obviously, like you're saying, because
Yeah.
you're clicking this in my head, like Buffy will have to be led to him. And the anointed's job and purpose is to
Yeah.
do that. So I guess the question is, when? And how will we see it? And what does that mean for Buffy?
I feel like a lot more shit's gonna have to happen. She's gonna have to slay a lot more vampires. Angel's gonna have to get into the premise somehow. Lots of stuff's gonna have to happen, I feel. And like obviously this child is going to serve a purpose. So some sort of altercation, confrontation gotta happen with this kid. And since he's a kid, I'm gonna assume that people are gonna be totally blindsided because he's a fucking kid. So who would suspect a kid to be, working for the master, doing the master's
Yeah, like looks
deeds or
innocent. So
whatever.
he's gonna be sending him out there like was doing
Yeah.
Darla and everybody else, but like, go fetch me this, go fetch me that. This time, bring me back a Slayer. But either way, I guess we'll see. I love it. What an episode. This one is always a nice return to for myself. It definitely always, as I've said, ranks on the higher end of episodes for me this season. But it really helps to drive that story along. Again, as I've said, it gives us the much needed character development and push along for the plot for the master. Because like we stated a couple episodes ago, when we were in the midst of it, we didn't hear about the master and witch. We didn't really hear about the master and teacher's pet. And then here we are again, bringing that full circle moment back. So I'm excited to see more involvement.
Yeah, me too.
Everyone, please feel free to write in and give us your thoughts on this episode. What were your favorite parts? Who would you award Shining Slayer to? And what gave you guys the weekly wigs? That concludes Never Kill a Boy on the First Date, and we will be back next week to cover our first real Xander-centric episode, The Pack. That one will be fun because Teacher's Pet was our mini Xander-centric episode because everyone was involved. But this one is Xander in the spotlight, and I told you last time, I cannot wait to get to that episode with you because that one it has a good bit to go over. And it's just an interesting thing that happens too. So can't wait for you to watch it. Yeah.
Okay.
Either way, can't wait to join you guys then. And remember, if the apocalypse comes, beep me. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Buffy on Revamped. Remember to join us next week for a new episode release as we continue our journey through Sunnydale. We also would like to hear from you, so share your thoughts. Discuss with us your perspectives on this or previous week's episodes by following us on Instagram and sending us a DM at revamped_rewatch podcast.
Or by emailing us at revampedrewatchpod@gmail.com. Additionally, we will be choosing one of your messages to shout out in an upcoming episode release. And don't forget, if you're looking for a friend and some unsolicited advice for the times when life feels out of orbit, go follow Life in Retrograde Podcast on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
Until next time, the Earth is definitely doomed. This podcast is dedicated to the Buffyverse, to its fans, and my sister, Tiffany Dawn Pearson.